Hello, and welcome to channel Ein Our Key, and I am your host, Voluntary. I was going to go straight into the topic, but I saw this and had to point it out.
They give their real name and show their real face. Who's that guy that paints himself up or has half yellow, half black? What's his name?
Paint? Seriously, Mr. Hovind? And you pretend you cannot even remember my channel's name after you and I met and debated? Perhaps you are deliberately forgetting it, considering how completely I danced circles around you. It is more likely you are doing what you often do, and you are trying to be insulting for the sake of being insulting. You pretend you don't know my channel's name. You pretend that Aaron Ra actually thinks he is a sun god. You constantly mock the screen names of Psyman Dan and Professor Dave. And yet you still treat all of us better than you do female critics such as Rachel Oates or Emma Thorne. That's when the real condescension comes out. Even so, I have never, and I never will, descend to your level and use insults as a substitute for argument. You claim to keep yourself pure by never using profanities, yet your insults are far more vulgar than any profanity. That being said, I will now proceed with the actual content I planned for this video. As everyone who has watched any video by Mr. Hovind knows, he has no idea how comparisons work. If someone says X is similar to Y, he interprets it as X is exactly the same as Y in every respect. The foremost example of this is when biochemists try to explain DNA to non-scientists. They say it is similar to a language or a computer program. This always sends Mr. Hovind off in exactly the wrong direction every time. When compared to a language, he will happily point out that it is possible to make jumbles of letters that make no sense to him. Now, they might make sense to someone else, but he is expecting both grammar and spelling rules to apply to a biochemical process the way they do to a language. After all, the biochemist said it is similar to a human language. So to Mr. Hovind, that means it is exactly the same as a human language in every respect. More often lately, DNA is compared to a computer program. This is more common now that we have computer programs to compare it to. We did not always have that, and it is a better comparison. The problem then is, to Mr. Hovind, that means it is exactly the same as a computer program in every respect. DNA has a lot more leeway than computer programs do. So he likes to point out how little leeway computer programs have and say that since DNA is exactly like it, therefore DNA has just as little leeway. Even then, there is leeway in computer programs. A bug in code can have effects that range from a small hiccup in operations to crashing the program, unless you are Mr. Hovind, in which case it always crashes the program. It is clear his knowledge of programming is almost as extensive as his knowledge of biochemistry. Having some experience in programming, and believe me, I am not a coder, I know there are multiple ways a person might code to get the same result. Another good example is when Aaron Ra said that butterflies were modified moths. Oh boy, did Mr. Hovind go off on that. Since comparisons mean they are identical, Mr. Hovind went on and on about each individual difference in order to prove they weren't exactly the same. Aaron didn't say they were exactly the same. He merely said they were similar when he said one was a modified version of the other. Pointing out their differences doesn't refute that they are similar unless you are unable to understand comparisons and think similar is exactly the same. There really is quite a bit of ground between exactly the same and completely different. That fact escapes Mr. Hovind's attention. Considering that bleach and lemonade are both liquids, I think I would be afraid to accept a drink from him. Thank you for watching. We're now in the double digits for subscribers, and hopefully we will only keep growing. So please like, share, comment, and subscribe to help my channel grow.